We begin our exploration of culture with the 1970s, the period of shock. It is interesting to note that there was even a style of rock and roll emerging at the time called shock rock. Alice Cooper and Kiss and other rock outfits employed elaborate get-ups which were outrageous at the time. This was when the devil was introduced into rock music, particularly with Black Sabbath and the emergence of metal. In the 50s, rock and roll was rather quaint by comparison. Sure, there was innuendo and characters that inspired outrage, but it was mostly tame. In the 60s, rock became more experimental, but was still mostly wholesome, at least until you get to the Doors. No, the 70s is where the devil really reared his ugly head. Speaking of the devil will be a reoccurring motif in this series, and I see no better way to start than with the devil's music. You see, these stages are also indicative of the individual's journey with the devil. The shock stage is where the Dark Lord introduces himself. The curtains reveal him, on stage, wings spread open. The movies of the time were also based around shock. From Jaws to The Exorcist to Alien, these terrified people back then. They may seem mild to us now, but that's because we are well past the shock stage. Nothing surprises us anymore. Star Wars was also revolutionary, with its groundbreaking special effects, and tapping into the ancient mythos of the hero's journey, but within a new and exciting sci-fi context. The shock era also brought video games into existence. Sure, there isn't as much to talk about with this as there is with video games today, but even with things as simple as Space Invaders and Pac-Man, it's interesting to note that these games are about aliens and ghosts, which is also tapping into themes of shock. Now, shock is both simultaneously scary and exciting. It is an adventure. This is a consistent theme throughout the 70s. In line with this theme is outer space and the otherworldly, the intrigue and fear of the unknown. A big part of 1970s culture is novelty. There may not be as much depth to the arts of this decade compared to the following ones, but that is only because everything was new. You need to stick your toes in the water before you swim to the depths. To us, the shock of cold water on our toes is almost cute to us because we are in the abyss. When you are in the bottomless trench, wading in a pool seems rather shallow by comparison. It would simply be unfair to compare Space Invaders to Dark Souls, or Smokey and the Bandit to Lord of the Rings. However, so it doesn't seem like I am completely discrediting the contributions of the arts of this decade, I will discuss the significance and importance of the first movie in my favorite series, Star Wars. Star Wars: A New Hope is the story of a boy overcoming materialism, rebelling, and being a part of a greater cause to combat evil. Most notably at the end where Luke shuts off his targeting computer and relies simply on the Force in order to save the day. This is a simple yet valuable tale, and why it is still cherished to this day, rightfully so. I should also mention that the stage of shock doesn't just abruptly change to the denial stage. There is a gradual transition, which I will here call disbelief, or perhaps disenfranchisement. This is when the devil has appeared, evil has presented itself, and while the initial shock or surprise is wearing off, the denial hasn't fully set off yet, leading one to panic and act rashly in response to the unpleasant stimulus. This is captured well in many films from the late 70s and early 80s, such as Taxi Driver and Blade Runner. Both of these movies show the fact that the unwelcoming metropolis can be very dehumanizing to the individual. These films are reflective of how people thought and felt about the societal upheaval of the 1960s, and how that atomized and isolated many people, causing a great sense of alienation. Interestingly, this idea seems to have regained popularity around 2019, with Joker, Blade Runner 2049, and the concept of the doomer. Perhaps we are in a brief slump where disbelief and disenfranchisement has resurfaced. The shock stage ended around 1980, capped off perfectly by the Diamond Head album Lightning to the Nations, which is perfectly named, might as well be Shock to the World. Their most famous song is practically about the devil introducing himself to the culture. Am I evil? Yes, I am. And with that, I wrap up the 1970s shock era. Next up is the denial of the 80s. To those who are struggling with disbelief and disenfranchisement, I hope to inspire wonder. I will leave you off in Dagobah. May the Force be with you.
I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.